We've got 61 people joining us so far, which is awesome. Welcome everybody. Just because we do have a very jam-packed agenda, what I'm going to do is get us started by handing over to my colleague David Williams, who is the Executive Director for Ventures here at SVA. Thanks very much, Dave.
Thank you, Jess. And on behalf of Social Ventures Australia and Citi Foundation, I offer a very warm welcome to the review platform launch. So thank you very much for joining us on what is perhaps a slightly chilly day for some of us around the country, despite the warm welcome, depending on where you are. The review platform is a free data collection and outcomes management tool that has been co-designed with and for youth employment service providers, and very importantly, places young people's voice at the centre, right from start to finish. My name is Dave Williams, and I head up the partnerships team and also head up the ventures team at Social Ventures Australia. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm joining you from the lands of the Camaragal people of the Eora Nation and recognise leaders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge that these lands were never ceded by traditional owners. For those of you who don't know Social Ventures Australia, a quick word. We work with diverse partners throughout the country to contribute to an Australia where all people and communities thrive, recognising that 1 in 4 Australians experience disadvantage in some form. We were created as a non-profit in 2002 to support social sector innovation, and we have the privilege of working throughout the country with many different partners, with communities, with service providers, government, learning institutions. And our work really focuses on the underlying causes of social issues that we're passionate about trying to overcome. We believe the review program and the platform we're launching today is a great example of that kind of work in practice. So the visible issue is youth unemployment, youth underemployment, disengagement of youth from the workforce, and we know that's only getting worse under COVID. But some of the issues holding that issue in place, some of the conditions holding that issue in place, we believe can be influenced and we have some control over working together. For example, access to good practices by service providers as they design, implement and evaluate the work that they do with young people, or government policies and government funding of programs that demonstrate good practice in support of young people. Those are the things that we believe have the potential to be influenced. What led us to create the review program, part of it was really about our work over a number of years now since when we were created, working with inspirational organisations in the youth space. Some of these great organisations like the Beacon Foundation, AIM, Gambina, Backtrack, Dismantle and many others continue today and continue to do that good work. This work convinced us that there was real value in capturing some of those learnings, that really deep Australian body of knowledge and experience, and then adding to that international experience and good practice, and then being able to translate that and share that in a really, really practical way that could support service providers in the youth employment space do what they're doing even better. And we would note that this work is only possible and has only been possible to develop the review program and the platform owing to generous philanthropy. Chief among the philanthropists who supported this program is the Citi Foundation through the Pathways to Progress grant windows. They've been supporting youth programs throughout Australia and throughout the world for many years, and so we thank the Citi Foundation for that generous support. I'd also like to thank our other supporters, the Jack Brockhoff Foundation, the Lord Mayor's Charitable Fund, the Osborne family, and Jill and Chris Lee also for their support that contributed to the work in review to date. And I note that we're not done. We're planning on a really exciting year coming up in the review program via the toolkit and the platform we're going to see today. We'll be in support of implementation of good practice with youth employment services throughout the country for the coming year. That work does require more resources. So anyone who has interest in supporting that work, please get in touch, or get in touch if you'd just like to learn more about the work. We have an exciting agenda today, so I'd like to pass over to Jess Graham-Smith, who will take us through the review platform, the launch for today's topic, and then we'll have a great panel discussion led by Dr. Lisa Fowkes, who heads up the employment programs at SVA. So with that, thank you, and over to you, Jess.
Thank you so much, Dave, and welcome everybody. It is incredibly exciting to welcome you to the review platform launch today. As Dave mentioned, my name is Jess and I am the project lead for review here at Social Ventures Australia. What I'm going to do for the next 20 minutes or so is just provide a bit of background about the platform and how we got here, and then I'm going to actually jump online and give you a live demonstration. So without further ado, let me just share my screen and we can get started. So what is the review platform? As Dave mentioned, it's a free online data collection and analysis tool that has been designed with and for the youth employment sector. The platform itself has been in development for about 12 months and has been co-designed with a group of 8 youth employment providers to ensure that we have created a tool that will bring value to the widest range of organisations delivering youth employment programs. I know that a number of the organisations who've been on this journey with us are on the session today, so I'd be remiss if I didn't just say a quick thank you to each and every one of you and for everybody who has been involved in this process and who has helped us to get to this point. We really couldn't have done it without you. For alternative community-led youth employment programs, Review provides credible and valuable data that is readily available and that can be used to inform program improvements, evaluation, reporting, and funding applications, something that we know at SVA can be a challenge for organisations who are often time and resource constrained. For larger, perhaps government-funded programs, Review provides a complementary set of data that goes beyond the mainstream measures of success, and that starts to look at young people's journey towards employment and the quality of work once they get there. Review is flexible and it's easy to use, so it can sit alongside existing tools and within wider organisational frameworks without creating an added burden on staff time and resources. It's important to note that the Review platform is part of the wider suite of review tools, which are based around 3 key drivers of good practice in youth employment. The first driver is that the design and implementation of programs are informed by 10 features that are common to effective youth employment programs and which have been identified through research and consultations as being important to maximising outcomes for young people. Evidence-informed and developed alongside a design working group of key stakeholders from across the youth employment sector, these features really underpin the review model, including the measures used in the review surveys and the review platform. The review model really places young people at the centre, and we know that for program providers committed to delivering the best possible outcomes, collecting regular feedback from young people about what is working and what isn't is essential. The review platform enables providers to collect meaningful feedback from young people quickly and easily in order to understand how well programs are performing, as well as the outcomes being achieved. And then the third driver of good practice in youth employment programs is that they are informed by the best available data, including the perspectives of young people, and that the data collected is then used to inform program improvement plans and changes to programs over time. The review platform enables providers to extract insights from the data collected from young people in a timely manner so that they can make decisions that have a measurable impact. Now, as I said, it's been 12 months in development, so I wanted to share a little bit about how we got here. As with many projects of this kind, we started off with research, looking at what good practice in youth employment looks like. We conducted interviews with over 22 youth employment program providers across Australia to really understand good practice models and get an understanding of users' needs. The output from this piece of work was what we call the review toolkit and website, which we'll share with you after the session. And that included a set of common measures related to youth employment and those 10 features of effective programs, as well as the review participant surveys. And it was during this phase that we really identified that data collection can be a challenge for many youth employment providers, largely because they lack access to free, easy to use data collection tools, and that data collection is often resource and time intensive, and it can be a very manual process. So we wanted to address this challenge, and we did that by developing and then testing a prototype platform. We brought on a group of 8 providers, and these are a mix of both small and medium organisations delivering a range of programs from pre-employment training to social enterprise employment programs, career coaching and others. This was really about ensuring that the surveys make sense from a user's point of view. We worked with a diverse group of young people from different cultural backgrounds, ages and genders to ensure that the questions are relevant, but that they also make sense for them. We also wanted to make sure that the data that is being produced is of value to providers and that it's presented in a way that can be readily used. Following the testing, we progressed with a custom-built platform, conducting further interviews and workshops with users to identify data requirements and to develop the charts and tables which you're about to see. And so that's led us to today. Here we are, launching the review platform for the youth employment sector. We have a set of shared measures which will contribute to a common understanding of impact across the sector and which will enable providers to implement data-driven improvements to program design and delivery and to tell their impact story. But the best bit is yet to come. At SVA, we're really excited to not only be launching the platform, but for the work that we're going to do to support organisations to implement the tools, to integrate them within their current workflows, and to use the data that's being collected. And we're really, really excited for that next phase. A quick overview of how the platform works before we jump online. The items in blue refer to the components of the platform that are used by program staff. The items in purple are the 3 participant surveys, which can be automatically sent to young people via email or via SMS, or can be conducted in person. And these surveys each take about 5 to 10 minutes for a young person to complete, depending on their individual circumstances and the number of questions that they need to answer. Survey 1 is completed by a young person at the beginning of a program, and it's used as baseline information against which to measure the employment, education and training and employability outcomes of young people. It also provides demographic information so that providers can better understand the needs of the young people in their cohort and in turn ensure programs are tailored to meet those needs. Survey 2 is completed by a young person at the end of a program, and these questions really focus on program implementation linked to the 10 features with a view to improving program design and performance, as well as short-term outcomes data. There's then Survey 3, which is completed by young people once they have left a program as a follow-up, approximately 3 months afterwards. And this starts to measure the intermediate and longer term outcomes that have been sustained since the end of the program. I just want to note here that it's important for providers to be engaging with the results throughout data collection, not just at the end of a program. Feedback can and should be reviewed throughout the whole period and really provides an opportunity for providers to respond in a timely manner to young people's needs. Okay, so you've had a lot of information now, but what I'm going to do is end my slides and I'm going to actually take you into the platform itself. I'll show you some of the key functionality of the platform, some of the key features, as well as some of the benefits that the data might be able to bring to a program. So the first step for any provider using the review platform is to create a new program. And this process has really been designed to remove the need for manual data entry and to make it as quick and easy for program staff as possible. In the first step, staff are asked to input some basic information such as the program name and start and end date. There's also space here for program notes to document key program features and to enable staff to track any changes to program delivery and design. Step 2 in the setup is to import participant details, and this can be done by uploading a CSV file, or you can input participants manually. The beauty of the CSV import is that if you have another database or system to manage your participants, they can be exported from that system and imported easily into the platform. This is also where you can choose how the surveys are distributed. As I said, they can be sent either via email or via SMS. The third step is to schedule the surveys so that they're automatically sent out from the platform. The dates here are predetermined, based on the program start and end dates, but they can be also set by program staff to ensure that they align with existing workflows. And then the final step is to review the information that's been entered and to confirm and create the program. Now, when a program is created, it appears here in the program list, and this is where you can manage multiple programs at a time. Programs can be sorted by start and by end date, and also by their status, either active or complete. What I'm going to do now is take you into a program that's already been created, and I just want to note here that this is dummy data that has been entered into the program to assist with the demonstration. So if we go into the program, we're taken to the program overview page where you can start to track and manage your surveys, edit programs if needed, and also access your results. The program overview page gives you instant visibility over who has responded to surveys and who needs to be followed up with. Up the top here, we have the survey tabs. And this is where you can start to manage the surveys in more detail, and again, to choose how the surveys are distributed. Of course, this will depend on your users' preferences and what's going to make sense for your own workflows. We've got the email and the mobile, but surveys can also be accessed in person by clicking on the survey link here. Now, the review surveys have all been de-identified to protect the privacy and confidentiality of young people. We've also gone down the road of building a custom platform, and we've done that to ensure that data is secure because it's all hosted here in Australia. Before answering any of the survey questions, young people are also asked to complete a consent form. Now, the review surveys have a mix of multiple choice questions, free text responses, and also 7-point Likert scale questions. Most of the questions in the surveys are mandatory. However, questions that relate to personal or sensitive information such as cultural background, work barriers, disability, and also some of the free text responses are voluntary. So young people don't have to answer every question. Now, once you create and collect all of that really rich information from your surveys, you're going to want to access your results, and you can do that from within the program page. The results are grouped into 3 categories. We've got the program outcomes, the participant information, and the program features, which relate to the program features common to effective youth employment programs and which underpin the review model. The Outcomes tab really gives you an overview of what has changed for young people because of the program. It tells you about the employment outcomes, but not just about whether a young person has moved into employment, but also the quality of that work. And we use some key indicators that talk about job quality, including type of work, we've got underemployment, career pathway, and job satisfaction. We also include some key education and training metrics. And then at the bottom of the Outcomes tab, there are a number of what we call change over time charts that show how well a program's activities are supporting young people to develop the employability skills that are important to them gaining and sustaining work. Things like confidence to find work, attitude to work, career direction, capacity to access the labour market, and networks. And these results are shown as positive change, no change, and negative change. And we use this traffic light system of green, orange, and red throughout the platform as a visual cue to understand the results. If we go to the Participants tab, we can see some basic demographic information that is collected via Survey 1, things such as age, gender, disability, cultural background, but we also include some other information that helps to shape a picture of the young people that an organisation is working with. Things like their distance from the labour market and some of the extrinsic factors that might be making it difficult for them to find and maintain work. This demographic information is really helpful for providers because it helps to ensure that not only programs are tailored to meet the needs and circumstances of young people, but it's also really helpful for reporting and funding applications. This third tab is the program features, and it relates, as I said, to the features that are common to effective youth employment programs. For each feature, there's a chart and also an accompanying table. And this data is collected at the end of a program, so via Survey 2. And it uses the feedback from young people to show what's working well in a program and where there might be some opportunities to do things differently. As we can see here with the strengths and aspirations chart, the majority of young people who have responded to Survey 2, based on the green visual cue, agree that the program has helped them to recognise their strengths and aspirations. Awesome news. That's what we want to see. In contrast, however, if we look at the barriers to employment chart, we can see that the visual cue is showing us red, which means that for the majority of young people, they actually disagree that the program has helped them to respond to the range of issues they may be experiencing. As a provider, this gives a useful insight into a potential area for improvement and provides the data to have further conversations, both with young people and program staff, about what could be done differently to better provide wraparound support. This might be building other referral pathways or developing partnerships and relationships with other specialist support services, noting that not every youth employment program is necessarily going to be doing this within their direct scope of the program. So look, that's the program results for each individual program. And although we recognise that these charts and tables and metrics have all been designed with and for the youth employment sector specifically, there are going to be organisations that have their own specific needs. And we've tried to address that by creating an export function within the program list. This enables providers to export all of the raw data for each of their programs, which is really, really handy if you want to do a bit of a deeper dive into the data to analyse what's happening, to build custom charts or tables, or even if you have other systems or sources of data collection and you want to export the data so you can integrate it with those other sources. Now, as I said, this is all very relevant to your individual programs, but what about the cumulative data? If we have a look at the review platform dashboard, this is the home page, the landing page that users will get to when they log in to the platform. And the dashboard is really showing the aggregated data from across all of the programs in the platform. So this may be all of your programs across a year or several years, or all of your programs across several different sites. And it's really intended to provide a high-level, quick access snapshot of the cumulative demographics, program outcomes, and program features. The data on the dashboard can be filtered by date range, and this is really useful when you need to report on your outcomes or your cohort for a specific period, such as a financial year. In terms of the layout of the dashboard, up the top here we have some of the most useful metrics for understanding impact. The total number of participants supported, the employment and education outcomes achieved, as well as some of the key demographic information that can be used for reporting and funding applications. The charts below tell us a little bit more about whether young people are still looking for work, and for those that have moved into employment, some important feedback about their satisfaction with their job. Underneath and on the left-hand side, we have a spider graph which shows the cumulative snapshot of what's working well across the programs. This can be used to communicate the strengths of an organisation or to identify some potential areas for improvement. If we have a look at the dummy data here, we can see that for trusted relationships, post-program support, and strengths and aspirations, the programs are rated really highly. In contrast, you can see that practical work experience is rated less favourably. And at a quick glance, this gives us some insight into what perhaps could be done differently. On the right-hand side here, much like the program results, we have a snapshot of the employability skills that have improved or increased as a result of your programs. And for providers, these are really useful metrics because it enables you to talk about the impact of your work as self-reported by young people. And that's a really, really key feature of review. I'm going to stop sharing the platform now. And just to wrap up, I'd like to say that, overall, the review platform has been designed to support youth employment providers to do what they do even better. We know that now more than ever, there is a need for youth employment programs that are tailored to the needs and circumstances of young people. And the review platform really supports good practice programs by ensuring that they are informed by the best available data, including the voice and perspectives of young people. We've given you a whole load of information, and for anyone interested in learning more, we'll be sending around some information after the session, including a link to the review website, which houses the review suite of tools, the 10 features, the review surveys and survey methodology, as well as some frequently asked questions about the platform. If you do have questions, feedback, or if you're interested in using the platform for your program, please reach out. We'd love to hear from you. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Dr. Lisa Fowkes. Lisa is the Director of Employment here at Social Ventures Australia and is joined by our panel members for a discussion about the importance of data and of youth voice to improve youth employment outcomes. Thanks so much, everyone, and over to you, Lisa.
Thanks, Jess. I'm hoping people can hear me. Yeah, I would like to acknowledge to the traditional owners of the land in which we all meet. I'm on Gadigal land of the Eora Nation, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So I'm going to go from the micro to the sort of macro for a second, because I want to frame this in terms of the challenge that we have in the youth employment challenge that we have now in the COVID, or the coming out of COVID, we hope, period. So before the COVID tsunami, can we call it? Can I combine two disasters in one? Youth employment was in terrible trouble. So we had youth underemployment that never recovered post-GFC. We had many young people in casual employment, in insecure employment, in jobs that didn't give them the opportunity to learn on the job, where there wasn't an investment in workplace training. And the period for young people in transitioning from full-time education to employment had extended. And that was particularly true for those young people without bachelor's degrees. So there's a crisis in particular for young people without university qualifications. But for those with university qualifications, we found many of them were sitting in jobs that didn't use their skills. So we had this very strange paradox of an enormous number of young people desperate to do work that was meaningful to them, combined with a labour market where there was constant complaint about skills shortages, reliant on migration to address our skills shortages, and many people sitting in jobs that simply didn't use their skills. So what we've seen now with the COVID crisis is that while in every recession, young people get hit hardest, in this recession more than ever before, young people have not only been hit by the simple fact of a recession, but because the sectors in which they're concentrated have been hit the worst. So as our economy recovers, when it does start to recover, which is some way off, those young people who are trying to make the transition into employment at this stage will find themselves competing with an enormous number of Australians with extensive work experience, with education, with a range of other assets, for a smaller number of jobs, and for jobs that are increasingly characterised by underemployment, by casual employment. That is, of course, unless we do something. So one of the things that we've been talking about and we want to try to promote is concerted action by governments and by employers, including by governments as employers, to create new opportunities for young people. Without that, all of the great work that we do on the supply side, great work with young people, will amount to nothing. This crisis includes, for example, the smashing of apprenticeship rates. We will face in a few years' time a terrible, entrenched, increased shortage of skilled workers if we don't do something quickly on that. So how does this fit in? So the irony that I pointed to, this paradox of a labour market that is increasingly a labour market for skilled workers has been combined with the labour market programs and employment assistance that really don't pay any attention at all to the quality of work. So we've had labour market programs that are one size fits all, that don't really take into account the skills that people come to or the aspirations of young people. And I guess this review platform sits within a philosophy that says one of the things that we do owe young people trying to move into this labour market is respect for their aspirations, their ideas about what works for them, what is needed by them, and we need to create opportunities for them to find a career, not just an immediate job. So this platform is designed to give a voice to participants in youth employment programs on the basis that it is incredibly important to take into account both their immediate needs and their long-term aspirations. And we need to do that at a macro level by creating more job opportunities, but we also need to do it at a micro level through the programs that we design and deliver. So in that frame, I think this sort of program and this sort of platform gives us all, as organisations that are committed to this work, the opportunity to do better, to understand what people think about the programs we offer, and to try to continually improve our practice when it comes to youth employment. So that's enough from me. I want to open up to our wonderful panel of people who have been part of this journey and who have who share our passion and interest in excellence in youth employment programs. So I am joined on our panel by Louise Lindsay, who is the Head of Sponsorship, Community and Engagement for the Citi Foundation. And as Dave said earlier, Citi is the major funder of this work. Pat Ryan, who is the CEO of Dismantle, which is a not-for-profit organisation and social enterprise based in Perth that provides young people support back into education and employment. And Pat has been a really important part of giving feedback and input into the design of this program. And Freya Conomos, who is the Youth Sector Development Manager of New South Wales Youth Action. And that organisation really exists in many ways to give support to the youth voice to ensure that young people are incorporated into policy making, policy thinking and delivery design for programs that are designed to improve their position. So I'll ask a number of questions, and then I want to also invite those of you participating in the webinar to ask any questions in the Q&A. I'm going to try to make sure that we have some time to respond to them. But I want to start with you, Louise. So you have been, and the Citi Foundation have been involved in supporting youth employment programs for a long time. And I guess I'm interested in your reflections on that work, and in particular, how you see this review platform and review project sort of fitting into that program of work.
Sure, thanks Lisa. And look, I'd like to start by thanking you and the team at SVA, Dave and Jess in particular, along as yourself. I mean, these things don't just happen. I know there's been so much work that's gone into this over a long period of time. And so, thank you for all of the efforts in this project. But yes, so Citi Foundation globally has a mission to promote economic progress and opportunity for low-income communities around the world. And a key focus of the Citi Foundation is, as was previously mentioned, pathways to progress. And ironically, I guess Pathways is our global response to the issue of youth employment, and I guess came about as a focus area post-GFC, where we really saw the impact that the GFC had on young people around the world as it relates to employment. I guess also it acknowledges, as you pointed out, Lisa, labour markets have changed over the last decade. And of course, this has also had a disproportionate impact on young people. And now, of course, we have the the young people facing the brunt of the COVID economic crisis. So I guess a platform like Review really could not have come at a more critical time in terms of supporting young people and their transition through to employment. And I think as a global firm, we're definitely committed to strengthening partnerships in this space and encouraging collaboration, because at the end of the day, it's young people that we care about and that we want to see on an upward trajectory into meaningful employment. And I think the Review project is a fantastic example of this. SVA identified the need for an outcomes measurement tool that was fit for purpose, incorporated the voice of young people, and in a meaningful way that we can look at the impact of these programs. So I think from my perspective, and as a funder of youth employment programs, it's amazing to see something like this come to life, where we can actually really look at the outcomes for young people and have had the impact or the voice of young people considered throughout this project.
Thanks, Louise. I want to ask you, Pat, you've been involved in helping us try to pull together this program and testing various iterations. I guess I'm interested in your reflections on the challenges for not-for-profit organisations trying to do this work in trying to gather information from their participants. I mean, what's it like, and where do you think this sort of platform might fit?
Thanks, Lisa. So first of all, would just like to acknowledge on Noongar country over here in Perth in WA, and pay my respects to Whadjuk people, custodians of this land, elders past, present and emerging. Thanks for the question, Lisa. So we are, in short, we're experts here at Dismantle at engaging young people and getting them job ready and mentoring them through the challenges that they've faced in their home life and personal life. But we're not experts in impact measurement. And in particular, we're not experts in software programming. So when we're working with young people, a lot of the time it's very much a case-by-case, personalised approach, and it needs to be. We can't have a cookie-cutter approach for, the diversity of young people that come through our programs. And so we can't be generalists when it comes to our service delivery. What we want to do and what's ideal is that we're experts. We're experts in one thing in particular. And now we have this off-the-shelf, fit-for-purpose tool to kind of fill in those pieces that we don't really have capability for in this organisation.
Do you want to tell us, Pat, a little bit more about your organisation and what you do, just to give the people on the webinar a bit of an idea about, where you're coming from? Yeah,
sure. So I'm Pat. So I've been with Dismantle since close to the beginning. We've been around since around about 2011. Dismantle basically runs programs in social enterprise that reaches out to young people at risk, connects them with caring mentors, then offers some of those young people employment in our social enterprises, and then holds their hand to transition towards another job. So there's a couple of activities there that work in sync with each other. But the main one I bring attention to is Renew Property Maintenance. So that's a gardening business, the social enterprise, services local councils and commercial business and WA Housing Authority, so big clients like that. And basically Renew just provides a platform for young people to try out their first job, learn those soft skills as well as those hard tangible skills to then walk on towards further employment. The great thing about Renew is, like I said, it's not that cookie cutter approach. It's a local solution to local needs. And to give an example of how we're able to provide that, thanks to our social enterprise business model, one young person is currently on JobKeeper. So there was one young person in particular that we thought just needed ongoing support from us. And fortunately, we were able to hold his placement to keep him employed with us. So he's now been employed with us for 18 months. That's a very long time for a 17-year-old to be in one program, but because we have the sort of capacity for that, thanks to social enterprise, we can offer him that length of employment. So that's us in a nutshell. Great.
And I'd like to encourage webinar participants. I can see a lot of questions in the dialogue which is specific to the program, to the platform, which is fantastic. If you've got questions for our panelists, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box, and while we've got them here. So Freya, I want to turn to you. You work with young people and with youth organisations, and as I said, a lot of your work is around youth advocacy and promoting that. I guess I'm interested in the challenges for the youth sector at the moment, particularly in this COVID period, and in the light of the desire to have young people front and centre in program design and delivery.
Thank you. I'd like to start with acknowledging that I'm on Gadigal land today, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, particularly emerging, given our discussion at the moment, and extend that respect to anyone joining us today who is Aboriginal. So Youth Action, as you said, Lisa, I think you gave us a very good introduction. Thank you. We represent the voices of young people and youth services across New South Wales. My specific role as Youth Sector Development Manager is to support the youth work services to implement best practice, best evidence-based practice, which just enhances their own practice. So the challenges at the moment for some services is capturing outcomes, particularly when things have moved online for COVID. It becomes a little bit more difficult. A lot of youth work practice in the past has been face-to-face, and now it's moved online, so it's a bit more challenging. But capturing outcomes has always been a bit of a challenge, and I think that echoes what Pat was saying as well. You can capture numbers pretty easily, so you can capture how many people join your program and how many people finish your program, but there's more to employment than just, I attended a program. So there's more of a story to be able to tell. Any youth worker is able to tell you that story verbally, the changes they've seen within the person, their self-confidence grow, or even just their mental health has improved, or anything really. And then you can ask any young person and they will be able to tell you more than just, I got a job. They'll be able to tell you the benefits of it, or perhaps they tried a job and didn't like it and wanted to try something else. But this information can be a bit difficult to capture at times. Youth workers are not experts in capturing data such as this. They have their ways, but they can be really time consuming at times. Or if a worker changes, then you don't have that continuity. So being able to capture that story in a way that is not an additional burden to youth services and youth workers is one of the biggest benefits of this, I believe.
So, I mean, it's the issue about what you measure has been one that, of course, we've grappled with quite a lot over the course of this discussion. And, we've really tried to move beyond simply the job, but ask a few questions which are about whether people are satisfied with their job, whether they're still looking for work, whether they're doing training relevant to their future career. So we've really tried to build some questions around the quality of the job as well as the quality of the program experience into this platform. I can see lots of questions from people in the webinar about whether there's an ability to customise questions. At this stage, that's not part of the platform. We've been, really focused on trying to get a sort of common set that give people something that is really meaningful, that captures that participant experience. It is something maybe later on that we would consider including some additional customisable questions. But at this point, that's not part of the platform. So I can see quite a few questions there. So my apologies. It's not a, can't give you carte blanche at this point to customise. And you can see there's some possibilities there about also sharing some benchmarks across participating organisations. It will all be confidential, so no one's going to be, pointing at organisations to sort of say this one's good, bad, or indifferent. But there may be some scope to try to share some insights from the data. So I guess I want to throw to each of you, and I know that you've touched on this, but I know actually I might ask you, Louise. I know Citi's put an emphasis on youth participation and youth voice in its thinking at the moment. Can you tell us why you think youth participation is important, and maybe about some of the challenges in operationalising it?
Sure, thanks, Lisa. Look, I think, and you know, any of you that have spoken to me would know that we at Citi Foundation don't want to be funding the same program for the same outcomes forevermore. We like to kind of focus on innovation and looking at trying and testing things that support partners to fund sustainable programs. So then the question comes up around, well, what is a sustainable program? And I think, although there's many elements of that, which I won't go into today, one of them, of course, is this focus, as we keep talking on, meaningful work. And it's not just about putting a young person in a job, it's putting a young person in a job that they find meaningful. Or a career for that. And I think the only person who can define what meaningful work is that young person. So if we don't consider the voice of the young person in every element of design, implementation and review of a program, then is a program really sustainable? Because are we going to achieve the outcomes for the person, for the young person, that are meaningful? So that doesn't come without complication or challenge. I will completely agree with that. But I think, you know, we have all moved beyond a world where we're trying to solve problems on behalf of other people. And that is where, you know, the voice of the young person is so critical, that we are working with young people to support transition to meaningful work. Does that answer?
Yeah, absolutely. Did either Freya or Pat, did you want to comment on this, your experience of perhaps some of the challenges in trying to operationalise this idea of youth participation?
I can speak a little bit to it. I agree, I echo everything Louise just said. But as well, we recently did a study about the youth sector in New South Wales, and about 53% of the managers said the top benefit is of youth participation is engaging young people in decision making with the ownership and empowerment, and then a further 42% so that it helps create more relevant and improved services and programs. So there's already a recognition that this is incredibly important, but one of the biggest barriers was that staff time, really. It was about 31%, I think, off the top of my head, said that staff time was the biggest barrier. And the second barrier was also when young people are in a state of crisis, that it's difficult to do youth participation. And just like, you know, of course, there's always a time and a moment to be able to help young people, but at the same time, even if they're in crisis, something like this, it's an easy question to even ask their opinion on something or how they're feeling. You can still include that and then explore further participation later down the track as well. So I think there is a recognition amongst youth services it's so important, but it can be a bit tricky at times, particularly when you add all the other admin work on top of it.
I think your point about participation itself being a learning experience, being an empowering experience is so critical. So often when they survey people who are in mainstream employment services, they describe them as being demeaning, being treated like a child, being disempowered. And if at the same time you're asking that person to go out and look for work, to present themselves to prospective employers as someone who's confident, who's in control, then that is so counterintuitive. So the idea of participation as a means of reinforcing empowerment, self-confidence, problem solving, insight, all those things that actually employers really want is such an important idea. It's why it doesn't make sense to me that we don't, you know, that so much of what is done to young people is done to them without including them.
And on top of that, I might just add one more thing. On top of that, you've also got that young people have a right to a voice. So it's not even that we're giving them the option, it's that they have a right to be able to speak up and say what improvements they want or how they're feeling or how they can contribute to these things, because they're people.
Right. Pat, did you want to comment on this one?
Yeah, so I think in general, we actually find it extremely difficult to have a good feedback loop of young people informing our approach. But as I say that as well, like, again, you know, we can't be experts in everything here, although we try to, but working in this space on reflection, well, I feel like that's an area that we need to work on, is having young people inform our approach more. The very nature of working in a program that seeks to engage young people who are disengaged and young people who are at risk. If our programs weren't effective and if they weren't along the lines of what young people think they need and want, then we'd just be getting young people voting with their feet. They just wouldn't be coming to work. They wouldn't be coming to our programs. And so at the same time as thinking that we need to work on that, I think that that's been the very core of our approach from the get-go, is finding out what would work, what would young people appreciate, and then just basically building on that as a core starting point. So I think that rather than thinking like, why is it important? I think it's the only thing that's important, because at the end of the day, if you want young people to participate in your program, your social enterprise or your initiative, then if it's not fit for purpose, they're not going to attend. We don't have the authority of, say, the Department of Education to say you have to be at our program. We've always just had an opt-in. So yeah, that's my piece.
And there's also, even for, I mean, many programs, of course, are compulsory for young people, but there's this idea of satisficing. So you just do the bare minimum that is required to meet the requirements. That doesn't mean that you get the best out of the service. And of course, for workers, it's terribly frustrating as well, because sitting there with someone who doesn't want to be there and really hates everything that's happening is pretty demoralising. So yeah, so I think there's a counter. I mean, for voluntary services, which many of the services we're talking about are, it's absolutely about being able to vote with your feet. But there's also some lessons, I think, for compulsory services about how to build actually active engagement. So one of the questions that's come through, or comments that's come through from our Q&A, has been around the challenge of getting people to answer surveys. And I have to say that my experience as well is that it can be a really difficult challenge. And having the platform does the work of at least trying to push it out there and push it out there using a number of platforms. But a question that's been raised by participants is, how are we going to maximise the likelihood that people will actually fill it out? Now, two things. I'm going to ask the panellists about this, but I also thinking that this is something would be great to explore with those of you on the platform who would like to work with us on it over the course of the next year as we roll it out. But it's a sort of area where we could do some shared learning, I think, about what could improve things. But I'll also open up to you guys. Have you got any thoughts on this issue? Yeah, Pat.
I've got strong thoughts. So when we first started doing surveys, I'm not the best youth worker. That's why we've got great people that actually work here in the youth team. But we had our survey, and the responses I was getting was, how often do you go to school? Every day. How's things at home? Great. How are you going? Great. I'm like, well, none of those are true. So we had to really, I had a big learning curve after the first round of doing surveys. This is 9 years ago. But we've learned and developed how we deliver survey and impact measurement activities. One is having a relationship. You have to have a relationship with the young person to have the trust for them to feel okay being vulnerable, revealing something that's quite tough for them. Two, how it's delivered is really important. So the time, the place, the mood, the dynamic that's going on. If you get that wrong and it's tense or it's stressed or it's noisy, you're not going to have a quality interaction. You're not going to get accurate data. And then third of all, skills, like collecting data from a young person, asking them questions in the right way to get the accurate response or the accurate picture is actually a skill that needs to be learned and something that needs to be developed in-house. So yeah, that's my advice.
Freya, did you want
to? I would agree with Pat on some of those things. And we've all been guilty of filling out a survey and going, yep, in our own lives. So it's perfectly reasonable to expect that. Building rapport is key. And if you've got that rapport before a group, fantastic. And if not, creating that safe space where people feel comfortable. I think as well, letting them know why they're filling out the survey. So explaining the purpose behind it, and it's not just a tick box that the organisation might be doing. It's not going to just sit there and then never be looked at. It's never going to be used. Like, it's going to be used, and letting them know this is a way to have their voice included. And I think as well, you know, so yes, the program uses surveys, but that doesn't stop people from doing other forms of collecting that information. If you have a group that would prefer to be able to sit there and talk about it together and go through that, or maybe even an individual person just sitting down with them and explaining it or having a conversation, some people are more like that, and that's okay. So finding ways that suit your workers and your organisation, and more importantly, the young people that you're working with, that specific group that you're working with, and just tailor it. And yeah.
Fantastic. Look, that's actually a perfect segue for me to hand back over to Jess Graham-Franklin to talk about the next steps with this platform and what we want to do. But can I thank our three panellists for that discussion? It's been really terrific to have you and to get your practical insights into both funding and supporting these sorts of programs.
Thanks, Lisa, and thank you, Louise, thank you, Pat, and thank you, Freya. You've all played an instrumental role in the platform, and it's been wonderful to have you with us today. Look, thank you everyone who has joined the session. There's been some incredible questions coming through on the Q&A, which demonstrates some real engagement with the content and with the platform itself. It's been a lot of information in a fairly short amount of time. So what I would like to encourage, we will circulate, as we normally do, the slides and the recording, as well as some additional resources after the session. We'll link to the review website, which houses the suite of tools. It's got the research that underpins the review model, the 10 features that we talk about. You can also access the review surveys there and look at the questions in more detail, as well as the methodology that sits behind those surveys. So please jump on and have a look at that website, because it does have a load of information that may help to support some of the questions that have been coming through. But if there are things that either haven't been answered or you'd like to talk about further, please reach out to us, and I'll just put up my contact details at the end of this. I just want to say, you know, one of the things that's really been coming through in the platform is what is next in the discussion is what does next steps look like? And I think it's really important for us to talk about that briefly. So SVA in no way sees this as the end of the road. Our role doesn't end here just because we've got the platform, and we hope to work really closely with organisations wanting to implement the platform and the tools to work collectively and collaboratively about the best way to do that. Every organisation and programs, context and cohort is different. So it's not going to look the same for everybody. And so part of our job is going to be about working with organisations to work out what's going to be best for them. Some programs have fixed start and end dates, others don't. So there may need to be some business processes or conventions that sit around the implementation of the platform. And they're all the sorts of conversations that we'll be having as we move forward. This is also about creating a shared, community of platform users where we can share learnings and examples of how the data is being used, how young people are being involved in program design and delivery, and some of the implementation experiences that are taking place. And that's certainly something that our role as SVA, as conveners and facilitators and collaborators within the sector, hope to be able to provide. We're at time now, so I'll just share with you our details. As I said, please jump on to the review website, www.reviewforoutcomes.com.au, and our email address there is review@socialventures.com.au. Thank you again, everybody who joined us for the session. We're so excited that we could share the platform with you today, and have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon.